Tonight on CFTK-TV, people in the Northwest now know who will be representing their region. BC citizens will have to wait a little longer on which premier will lead the province, and Canada has expelled a number of Indian diplomats.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, I'm Damian Smith, and thank you for joining us here on CFTK-TV. Well, despite the BC provincial election currently in the middle of a recount as we speak, we do know who will be representing the three regions here in the Northwest. Jaylene Matthews from CFTK has the latest.
It was a tight race that will result in some significant changes across the Northwest. In the Skeena, it was Claire Rattay of the Conservative Party taking 51% of the vote.
I just want to say thank you to everybody that supported me and put their faith in me. It means the world to me, and I'm excited to get to work. I want to congratulate the other candidates on doing a great job, specifically Sarah. I think that she, ran a really good campaign, and I wish her all the best. And yeah, thank you. Can't wait to get to work.
Zimmerman says that although they didn't win the race, she's proud of the work put in.
I think the first thing I'm super proud of is all the people that came together to work on this campaign, and I'm really proud of the team that we had, the volunteers that we had, and I'm grateful to the people who participated in this vote. And I think the biggest thing that I would like to see in the future is more people get to the polls.
In the North Coast riding, the NDP dominated with 64.9% of the vote going to candidate Tamara Davidson, edging out Conservative candidate Chris Sankey.
Here on the North Coast, we ran our campaign on inspiring people, that together we can make life better for people here. I am proud our communities have proven that once again, in overcoming challenges that we face, this is a place where people support people despite cultures and communities.
And in the Bulkley Valley-Stikine district, after 4 terms as an NDP riding, elected a Conservative candidate. Sharon Hartwell took 52.4% of the vote, making her the new MLA for Bulkley Valley-Stikine.
Well, I'm pretty excited to be able to have a voice for Bulkley Valley-Stikine. I've spent 20 years in local government and 12 years as mayor, so getting back in is pretty exciting. There was a big need for change that people were asking for, and I was happy to be the face of that change. We had an incredible team on the ground working with us, so I'm just happy at the result.
Just get into it, and I really hope that you guys will stay behind me, hold me accountable, stay in touch with me. I hope I can make you proud. Thank you. Thank you.
For CFTK News, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
And with that, we knew it would be a tight race on Saturday when counting all the votes. Saturday saw the election largely dominated by the Conservatives and the NDP, along with a couple of seats won from the Green Party. We'll continue to monitor whether or not the Green Party decides to give up a seat to the NDP. And here's Kathy Lee from CTV.
A day after the polls closed, and the BC NDP and BC Conservatives are locked in a virtual standoff. As of midnight, neither the BC NDP nor the BC Conservatives achieved the 47 seats required to form a majority. Both BC NDP leader David Eby and BC Conservative leader John Rustad were re-elected in their ridings, and despite 2 newly elected Green Party MLAs, either Sonia Furstenau failed to win re-election.
When a wave happens, it's really hard to hold it back, as the NDP discovered last night. It was always going to be a tough night for the NDP. They hit their high water mark in terms of seats in the last election, so they knew going into last night they were going to be losing seats.
BC NDP leader David Eby highlighted that the message in the narrowest of margins is that they need to do better for British Columbians. BC Conservative leader John Rustad promised to keep the fight and said the election has forever changed the political landscape of the province. And while Furstenau expressed disappointment with her defeat, she was optimistic for her colleagues who could play a pivotal role in the legislature. All this to say, in the end, voters are still left wondering which party will be tasked to address and fix their concerns around main issues such as affordability, healthcare, and public safety.
They want change, and this is a national and a global phenomenon coming out of the pandemic. The pandemic was tough. The economic environment out of the pandemic was tough. And so it's been very tough on incumbent governments.
At least 3 ridings are too close to call and possibly subject to automatic recounts, since the margin between the NDP and Conservative candidates in those ridings is less than 1 percentage point, which means the race could come down to mail-in ballots, which could take several days until final results come in.
Now, Elections BC also said that an estimated 54.7% of registered voters cast ballots in the provincial election, which is up from below 54% in the previous election of 2020. With nearly 2,038,000 ballots cast, Elections BC says it's the highest tallied count in a provincial election. It was also the first time that electronic tabulators were used in a general election in the province's history. Elections BC says that 85% of the result has been reported by 9 p.m. on election night, compared with 13.5% of the results at the same time with manual counting for BC's election back in 2017. Now, some changes have been made from the Bank of Canada, which may give Canadians some more incentive to buy homes. But as CTV's Martin McMahon puts it, citizens may still be hesitant to be buyers in the market.
Many people have been hoping for an interest rate cut, and on Wednesday, the Bank of Canada is expected to slash its benchmark rate by 0.5 percentage point. That would see it drop from 4.25% to 3.75%. It comes after September's inflation numbers came in lower than expected.
That is probably telling them that the economy is a little weaker than they were expecting heading into 2025. And it means that the economy probably needs those rate cuts a little faster than the Bank of Canada was perhaps planning before the most recent inflation data.
But what does all of this mean for housing demand after a slower than usual period of home sales in Metro Vancouver?
The first half of October numbers for the Lower Mainland, which had been one of the weaker markets in recent months, has really jumped. Things have really picked up in October, maybe ahead of those the expected larger rate cuts.
While some welcome a drop in interest rates, many feel the prospect of home ownership remains distant.
The lower the better, I guess. I can't afford to buy a house on my income, so if I live with friends and family, then I possibly do it, but just one single income, I don't think it'll work, unfortunately.
I feel like it's still not an affordable thing to buy a house here, even with the interest rates being cut. I would have to see more programs for new home buyers, I think, before I would even consider.
Yeah, I'm thinking even they're gonna cut this interest, many people still cannot afford these opportunities.
As for mortgage rates, they are slightly above 4% at most banks. But many economists believe they could fall below that mark at some point next year. Martin McMahon, CTV News, Vancouver.
Coming up next, Canada has expelled a number of Indian diplomats out of the country. Welcome back. Well, developments on storylines have been made on Indian diplomats, which now sees a number of them around the country being expelled from Canada. Here's Jeremy Sharon in Ottawa with an update.
In a stunning exclusive interview before being expelled from the country, India's top diplomat denies serious allegations of criminal activity, including any involvement in the murder of a top Sikh leader in BC last year.
You yourself are a person of interest in the murder of Hardeep Ninjar. Did you have anything to do with his murder?
Nothing at all. No evidence presented. Politically motivated.
Indian High Commissioner Sanjay Kumar Verma told CTV's Question Period with Vashi Kapelos his government has never been involved in the targeting of individuals with the end goal of their death.
Let me put to you what Minister Jolie said. The decision to expel these individuals was made with great consideration and only after the RCMP gathered ample, clear and concrete evidence which identified 6 individuals as persons of interest in the Ninjar case, one of whom is you.
Which Vashi was never shared. Let me see what the concrete evidence she is talking about. As far as I'm concerned, she is talking politically. As far as I'm concerned, she has got nothing in her hand.
Canada expelled 6 diplomats, including Verma, after the RCMP and the federal government accused them of engaging in serious criminal activity, including homicides and extortions, and targeting members of the Khalistan movement, which India opposes. Verma insists Canada hasn't presented any proof of its claims.
Unfortunately, not a shred of evidence has been shared with us.
The RCMP says its deputy commissioner made attempts earlier this month to meet with his Indian counterpart to present that evidence, but had no success.
The evidence that the RCMP has collected has already been subjected to a level of review by the Crown Prosecutor. You can't lay charges with no evidence.
Canada's most recent High Commissioner to India says Canadian officials have tried to share information several times in the last year.
There's no doubt in my mind that we have shared more than sufficient information and evidence with the Indian side up to now at every level of the Canadian government and the Indian government.
India's High Commissioner also accused Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of destroying the bilateral relationship between the two countries, but insisted trade ties won't be affected.
Now turning to tonight's forecast, the coast should see pretty clear conditions tonight with a low of +1. The Terrace and Kitimat region should also have a low of -3, while also having clear conditions with winds up to 15 kilometers per hour, with the wind chill expected to drop to -8. And in the Bulkley Valley, you should see a steep drop to -13 tonight, with winds also at 15 kilometers per hour and ending up with a -15 outcome with the wind chill. Now on to your weekly weather forecast. The coast should see some sun for tomorrow, followed by some rain and back to sun on Friday, and then back to rain to start the weekend. The high will be 9 degrees as temperatures will be steady, and the low will be 1 degree, which is situated tonight. The Terrace and Kitimat area should have a pattern similar, however, with some potential snow on Wednesday, and the high will be 7 on a rainy Saturday, and the low will also be tonight at -3 degrees. Finally, in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, flurries will be arriving this week, including today, Wednesday, and Thursday, and the high will be 6 tomorrow and Saturday, with the low at tonight at -13. And now we take a look at your Northwest roadside report. On Highway 16, there are slippery sections and water pooling east of Prince Rupert, as well as between Telkwa and Fort Fraser. There is construction in Burns Lake, utility work in Fraser Lake and Vanderhoof, slippery sections west of McBride, and bridge maintenance east of Purden Lake. On Highway 37, there is water pooling between Terrace and Kitimat, utility work, roadside brushing, and bridge maintenance north of Misiad Junction, and slippery sections from Delta Peak until the Yukon border. On the Nishka Highway, there is water pooling on the entire highway, construction west of New Ayanch, and bridge maintenance north of Ross Wood. And on Telegraph Creek Road, there are slippery sections north of Telegraph Creek. And now let's take a look at the cameras from around the Northwest. Still to come, a 32-year-old ban was lifted this past summer in Newfoundland with a variety of responses. Welcome back. Well, moving on to vaccine updates, where provinces around the country have various reports on how many people are getting flu and COVID-19 vaccines, as well as when they will be available for another upcoming flu season. Here's Heather Wright from CTV.
As temperatures go down, health officials are urging people to roll their sleeves up. Many provinces launching seasonal vaccine programs, including shots for the flu, RSV, and COVID-19.
They should go out and make sure that they're getting their vaccines as soon as they possibly can.
While most provinces began vaccine rollouts this week, some will begin later this fall. Ontario will start administering both flu and COVID shots to the general public on October 28th. While British Columbia has not said when it will begin administering the new COVID vaccines, shots of the current vaccine are still available. Alberta's campaign began this week, but got off to a rocky start with no COVID-19 vaccines available in many pharmacies due to a distribution glitch.
We had to call everybody and tell them the situation.
Even before the glitch, some had criticized Alberta's immunization campaign, saying the government had provided little information about vaccines. The health minister says the same amount of money is being spent on advertising this year as it was last.
Nothing has changed. I just think, people perhaps are looking at it differently.
At the peak of the pandemic, Canadians lined up for COVID shots, but vaccination rates since then have sharply declined. According to Health Canada, the number of Canadians who got the last version of the vaccine was just 18% as of June 30th.
Low uptake today is going to lead to problems not tomorrow, not 3 weeks from now, but Christmas time, when we're going to have absolutely all the hospitals overflowing.
Health Canada has approved new, updated COVID-19 vaccines, which they say are a better match to the variant of the virus currently circulating. And health officials are also looking to the south, hoping to get a peek of what's to come.
Southern Hemisphere is seeing what we would call a fairly typical respiratory virus season, influenza A, RSV, as well as COVID-19, but not seeing anything unusual in the patterns there. Now, that doesn't necessarily always translate here.
If those patterns do hold up, it may indicate that flu cases could peak in late December or early January. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
Now, months after the 32-year-long fishing ban was lifted off of Newfoundland's coast, workers are now getting used to the different conditions in the Atlantic Ocean. However, there has been some pushback from locals. Here's Garrett Barry in St. John's.
For decades, Newfoundland and Labrador mourned as the historic northern codstock slowly recovered. The fishery was shut down by the federal government in 1992, throwing thousands out of work in order to let the resource rebuild. This year, it was a surprise when the federal government said the long wait was over, that commercial cod fishing was back, that fishermen could take more from the water, and big offshore vessels, after years of prohibition, could get in on the action too.
She ignored her own scientific advice. She took advice from, God help us, the 6 Liberal MPs.
The Fish, Food and Allied Workers, the powerful fisheries union in Newfoundland and Labrador, immediately disagreed. They protested and went to court, armed with evidence that Fisheries Minister Diane Leboutillier overruled advice provided by her scientists in her own department, who advocated for no changes. This week, the FFAW learned their first application for emergency intervention by a judge failed.
Well, obviously, very disappointed.
But the main showdown is still to come, and the union is vowing to keep fighting.
The minister's decision, DFO minister's decision, is so important that it needs review. It's a serious issue.
Ottawa said international agreements forced it to let foreign vessels back in after the fishery reached a certain size. Another part of the rationale to reopen commercial fishing was in part to keep fish plants running all year. Large offshore boats can do that. They'll fish over the winter. But the FFAW believes an offshore winter fishery could really hurt cod reproduction. Those offshore boat owners say overall their role is still small and the overall fishery is still fairly small too. They say it's unlikely to cause irreparable harm.
The idea that the minister's decision of 18,000 tons is going to do irreparable harm really doesn't stand up.
The docks are quiet now. Most everybody's got all their fish caught for the year. But this dispute is sure to heat up again when the parties head back to court next year.
And now we turn our attention to the stock market. The Canadian dollar is down just over 0.2 cents. The price of gold is up $5.80. Oil is up 73 cents. Natural gas is up 7 cents. And aluminum is up 29. In Toronto, the TSX is down 99. The Venture Index is up 1.34. In New York, the Dow Jones is down 344. And NASDAQ is up 50.46. Still ahead, 4 cabinet ministers in Parliament will not be seeking re-election, creating problems for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. 4 cabinet ministers in Parliament will not be seeking re-election, and that may impose problems for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. CTV's Colton Prail has more.
Justin Trudeau is returning to political chaos as Ottawa gets back to business Monday.
He doesn't look like he has control of things because he doesn't.
This week, dozens of Liberal caucus members plan to confront Trudeau over his position as party leader. It comes days after news that 4 cabinet ministers won't seek re-election.
What caucus needs to be thinking about is, okay, so what happens next? What do we do about it? It might be a little bit too simplistic to say, well, change the leader. But there's another option, and that is change what the leader leads.
It's not just party politics plaguing the PM. For 2 weeks, Parliament has been at a standstill.
We're not just going to let $400 million of corruption
be swept under the rug.
The Conservatives say the Liberals are hiding documents related to misspent federal dollars by a now defunct Green Development Fund from the RCMP. The Liberals argue the Conservatives are fighting against their own motion to send the matter to a committee for further study.
There is only one political party that is holding things up in the House of Commons right now, and that is the Conservative Party of Canada.
The NDP won't break the deadlock.
What's needed is the Conservatives stop filibustering their motion, and the Liberals need to provide the documents the Parliament has called upon them to provide.
Until the privilege debate is resolved, the government isn't passing legislation like changes to the capital gains tax, bills related to citizenship and military justice, and the Online Harms Act.
These are children being harmed at a very significant scale across the country. The harms are real, and if we don't pass this, they will continue.
Experts say however Trudeau reacts, it can't be status quo.
Liberals can either attempt to be the vehicle for change, or they will surely be its victim.
The Liberals say they won't prorogue Parliament, meaning the legislative standstill now entering week 3 shows no signs of slowing down.
And finally, for many Canadians, hockey is a sport that never leaves, no matter what age they may be. Mike Lamb from CTV has more on a man who was inducted into the 80 and over Hockey Hall of Fame.
My name's Gary Casavicki. I've been playing hockey since I'm about 6 years old. I'm now 80. Play for the love of the game. I enjoy it. I've been nominated to be inducted in the Canada 80+ Hockey Hall of Fame. It's an organization that's been going on for 16 years or so. Very few people. There's only less than 360 Canada-wide. American teams, they have an 80+ team as well. So we play a couple of international games with them, which is going to happen in Burlington this year.
Congratulations to all the inductees.
There's only 3 or 4 guys in Atlantic Canada ever been inducted, and 3 of them are on this team of the Ancient Mariners. It all came as a bit of a surprise. Tony put my name and Hubert, our teammate, our name forward, and it sort of evolved from there. My family really encouraged me to go through with it.
Started playing hockey, I guess, when I was about 5 years old on a pond near our house in River Bourgeois, Cape Breton. And I've been playing hockey on various teams since then. I think staying active keeps you young. The joy you get from just gliding on the ice and the camaraderie in the dressing room is something you can't forget.
Way to go, Gary.
I feel good on the ice to say I'm 80, but you always see things going on, you know, where you want to be, but getting there, so that's another story. I never considered age. It's just one of those things that goes on day by day. You get older, and I don't think about the number.
They're pretty impressive, I must say. It's nice to see them going up to the Hockey Hall of Fame.
These guys are just phenomenal. Gives us inspiration to stay with it.
We are so fortunate to have these 80-year-olds play with us. They're still good skaters, good hockey players, and great to be with out here on the ice. I hope I'm still doing it when I'm 80.
You feel like a kid every time you're out there.
It all comes down to the love of the game, though. That's what it is, the thrill of it. For some reason or other, there's still a thrill.
And that will be all for tonight's cast. Thank you very much for tuning in, and good night.